we're talking about breed traits and how they affect your training plan.
Often when we get called in, it's for things that just might require management and a little bit of forethought versus a training program. Yeah. So a lot of times in these situations, we can develop a training program for you, but often working against the dog's natural inclination is going to be more difficult than it's probably worth in most situations. Yeah. So today we'll talk a little bit about each of these sort of categories of breeds and with broad generalizations for each of these breeds. Taking into consideration that each individual dog is going to be different. So just because your dog did something differently or you were able to teach your dog to do something differently, we are working in broad generalizations today.
Always the exception. Always.
Yes, always the exception.
Yeah.
So we'll get started talking about your herding breeds. Because my house is now full of herding breeds. I have, for those of you that don't follow me on social media, I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old Border Collie, a 3-year-old Malinois, and a 3-ish-year-old cattle dog that we brought home just a few months ago. So he is settling in nicely and becoming a whole entire herding dog.
He's learning how to be a herding dog.
Yeah. He's learning how to do things and not just be fat. So in living with these dogs, one of the things you really have to keep in mind is that these are incredibly intelligent dogs. So these are usually the dogs that people say, if you're going to get one of these dogs, you need to give them a job. And that doesn't make any sense to anyone who's not a dog trainer. So for example, Opie's job is to chase all of the squirrels up the trees. Oh, yeah. Which is super fun because he is currently on injury reserve because he has injury. So he has to be leash walked, and he is super mad that he cannot chase the squirrels up the trees. So that's what we're dealing with currently. But for my dogs, their day-to-day job is sitting quietly in their kennels, waiting at the door before they go outside. We do training of some sort at least 5 days a week. And I have pretty high energy working dogs. So we are in class at least once a week. We're hiking at least once a week. And those are all pretty normal occurrences for us. And so even when we are out doing things, when we're out hiking or when we're out for a walk, their jobs are then checking in with me, loose leash walking, coming back to me when I ask them to, pulling over on the side of the trail if people or other dogs are coming over. I work really hard on teaching them to lay down and wait while people or bicycles go by. And all of those things are what I consider to be their day-to-day jobs. And it helps me live with them. Part of having such an intelligent breed is that they need to have that level of communication with you. And they have to have more advanced training skills than just your typical 6-week puppy class. If not, they're going to get into stuff. And they're going to create games for themselves that are not things that you want them to do.
I do a lot of that anyway, even with the training.
Yeah. Like getting on this call and having Toad pull all of my training stuff off the shelf as we were getting started with this call. So
a nice, humbling moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm a big fan of herding breeds. And even my vet said, once you get a herding breed, you won't choose another dog again. And she was right. I probably will have Malinois and cattle dogs the rest of my life at this point. But but they are a lot of work. Like, you have to be one step ahead of them. And if you are not into training and doing and going with your dog, then choose a different breed.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things we see often around, like, that kind of herding working group is you see a lot of the Australian Shepherds going into homes with little kids. I mean, even would you put corgis in that category too?
Yeah, corgis are good.
Yeah. I mean, dogs who go and they nip at heels and everything, it's because they're doing their job. This is what they were bred to do. When you're getting a dog like this and you have kids, you do have to manage your expectations a little bit and know that there will be times where, you can't have the kids outside running around playing tag and your Aussie, your Corgi, your Border Collie running out there with them, because the dog is going to be hurting the kids, and the kids could get hurt, and it's not the dog doing anything wrong, it's what they're bred to do, it's in their genes. And trying to fight against that, I mean, trying to teach them not to herd, I mean, that's a serious job. That's
and so the foundation of these dogs is make the thing move.
Yeah.
So, like, Cargo, she's pretty removed from herding lines at this point. She's a working line Malinois. She still wants to make the things move. So once the birds are moving, she's good. Once the ducks are moving, she's good, but she's going to keep going until they start moving. So then if you have kids who are running, then the dog is like, oh my gosh, I have to keep it moving. And so that's where you get the nippy, that's where you get the dog that jumps on the kids, because it's moving and the dog then thinks they made it start moving.
Yeah.
And so then it's very, very self-reinforcing for those kinds of dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you were talking about that, how it's self-reinforcing and it's just what they do. And it made me think of one of our other groups, the retrievers, and how, we talk about them being mouthy, and obviously retriever is part of their name. They're great dogs. Obviously everyone has a lab or a golden, or knows a lab or a golden, or many of the other, retriever breeds. And I just think about when we were little kids, my cousins had a golden retriever, who used to get uncomfortable when we as kids would jump off the dock into the lake, and she would literally retrieve us kids. She would swim herself out, grab us we had to start wearing life jackets even though we could all swim, because we knew she was going to come and grab us and swim us back into shore. She was literally retrieving us to bring us back in. Like, she could not help herself, but she was also the dog who would bring in the newspaper and bring in the groceries, and she loved being able to do that stuff. So yeah, retrievers are mouthy. I mean, and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, and if you think back to what they were bred to do, is they're bred to get ducks out of the water.
Yep.
So you have to think too about, like, if you have a swimming pool or if you live on the water, then you probably need to put up a little bit more management, like a fence or leash walks or something, so that so that you're not constantly fishing a dog out of the pool. Because a soaking wet golden retriever coming into your kitchen and shaking off every single day is not something that I want to live with. And I can imagine that most of our clients don't also want to live with
even them. Just drying them off, like, even to get them half dry, you still have a wet dog around your house all day long. Like, they're like chamois, like they just absorb all the water. And just like you said too, that's something that you're really going to have to use the management side, because the training side is going to be far more effort and knowledge and ongoing continuation of training than anyone has time for.
Right. And we are very pragmatic when we're coming up with training programs. Like, we know that you have a fenced-in backyard so that you can just open the door and let the dog out. But if you don't want the dog in the pool, then we need to come up with a different solution so that you can still just open the door and let the dog out without having to leash walk the dog around your backyard. Because I'm living that, and it's annoying, and nobody wants to do that. So that's where those pieces come in.
Yep. Yeah. And, you know, you can, I mean, there are stories, again, just like there's always that exception to the rule of the dogs who have been trained to only go in the pool when they have, you know, a certain harness or bandana on, that's their cue. If you're planning on doing something like that, you need to start that pretty much from day one and be very consistent and know what you're doing and put in a lot of effort. That's not something that you're just like, oh, one day you teach the dog and now the retriever no longer has a desire to go in the water without his bandana. It doesn't happen that way. It takes a lot of work. And so if you're not ready to do that kind of work, management makes a lot more sense. And that's not a judgment call for these things. All of these things that we're talking about, it's not an, oh, well, you didn't want to put in the effort. We're all busy. And a lot of times it makes more sense to just do the management instead of all of the time and effort and knowledge and money that training takes.
Yeah. And sometimes management is super easy. Like, you know, a lot of retrievers that I know have been taught to pick up a toy when they greet people so that they don't put the people in their mouth. And it's a very soft, you know, it's very soft, but no one wants your 80-pound slobbery golden retriever holding them.
And again, kids, and I mean, you know, you think about older people, thinner skin, like it can be, especially when you get an exuberant dog who's also mouthing, like, you know, they're cute and cuddly, but they're also, you know, around 100 pounds. No one needs that.
So management there, like teaching your retriever to pick up a toy, satisfies that need for that dog, and then they hold the toy and greet the people just as happy as they can be. But then the people are a lot happier because your dog is not holding their hand, you know. So that's, you know, the other side of things that you can think about also for these management pieces is it would take a lot less training to teach your dog how to pick up a toy because retriever than it would to stop holding people, because that is the need that they are trying to fill. So, you know, that's a piece to kind of look at too. Like, can we come up with a solution to fill this need in a different way that also won't require a ton of training?
Yeah, I mean, we had, you know, in my pet sitting and dog walking career, we've had several Goldens, but one in particular who, you know, he'd get all the way out on our walk and decide that he just really wanted to lay down, because I would guess it was, you know, a mix of boredom and other things. And we learned really quickly that if we brought a toy along with us that we hid from him for the start of the walk and then gave it to him, you know, towards the end, all he wanted to do was carry something. He just needed to carry something all the way home, and then he was fine. But until we figured that out, this was before I knew anything about training and behavior. I mean, it was brutal. We'd be like, oh my God, I have to go to other places, and I'm stuck here. I can't carry this 100-pound golden retriever. What do I do? But we'd keep you know, and that for us was much easier than really trying to suss out what was going on there. It was easier for us to just bring a toy and give him a job and something to do to get through it, instead of figuring out exactly why he was just, you know, plopping down. He wasn't tired. I don't know. But yeah.
So another popular breed that we have and that we see on a regular basis are hound dogs. And hound dogs can make wonderful, wonderful pets for people. They're super easygoing. They tend to, you know, be super friendly with people. But a lot of the struggles that people have is the hound dog nose and the hound dog baying. So again, let's go back to what they're bred to do. Hound dogs are meant to find things and then tell you
loudly.
So when I get to houses and I've got a beagle that's woo, I usually will tell them, I found you. And it's super fun because that's exactly what they're doing. They're telling you, I found it. And they're very loud and they're very excited about it. But that's one of those things that you have to kind of keep in mind when getting these dogs, is that's sort of wired in. You know, they are going to sniff stuff, so maybe not the best running partner. Would much rather, you know, instead of running a mile with you in 15 minutes, they would rather take 3 hours and sniff for that mile. And so that's one of the things you kind of have to keep in mind. Also, like looking at your lifestyle, if you live in an apartment, you know, make sure that you're really nice to your neighbors before you bring home a beagle. You know, make sure that they're getting their needs met by sniffing and, you know, having the chance to smell the flowers for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. That's really, really what they need at the end of the day, is just sniffy everything.
Yeah, I can think of some hounds where you could probably hide every single individual piece of kibble for them to go find, and they would go do it. Like, I would never feed a hound out of a bowl. I would be hiding everything for them to find.
Yeah. And a lot of, like, you know, working through behavior modification with a lot of these dogs, you know, once we were able to sort of let them take a step back and sniff stuff, you know, take a few minutes and sniff their environment and really saturate on what all the smells were, they're a lot easier to live with, you know, especially dogs that live, these hound dogs that live in a sort of very congested community, like down near the ocean front or an apartment complex. You know, once we started spending a few days, like, you know, all right, we're out here for 20 minutes. If we only make it to the corner, then we only make it to the corner. You've sniffed every blade of grass between here and the corner. That is a happy people.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we talk about that with every client too, that, you know, remembering who this walk is for. Again, if you want to go for a run, do not take your hound because it's not happening. And so when you're walking your dog, make sure you're doing what your dog likes to do. Again, my 3 contingencies are, as long as they're not pulling you, they're not getting anything too disgusting, and it's safe to do so. Like, other than that, they can lead where we go, because it's good for them, yeah. Especially a hound. Yeah. I mean, and you have to think too about how much information they're getting from all of that. I mean, if the average dog, you know, think about all the things the average dog smells. A hound is just, I don't even know. So much information.
Yeah. It's overwhelming. Like, if I stop and think about it, it's overwhelming for me. So I can only imagine for the dogs, how overwhelming that can be.
Yeah. So another one of our kind of groups is terriers. Terriers are, you know, your digging dogs. If you have a terrier, Crystal said it earlier, the first thing you should do is get them a digging box, and I second that. My whole yard has become a digging box because of management issues on my part. The dog is doing what she does, you know, what she does really well. And a lot of people, again, ask us, how do I stop the digging? Our goal with terriers is not to stop the digging, it's to put it in a controlled setting, somewhere you can keep it under control, you can manage it, because again, just like hounds who need to sniff, terriers need to dig. It's also really, really great for them. I have not had to file Nellie's nails in 2 years, I think, because she wears them down herself by digging. That's a great plus. It's also a really great workout for them. They use their whole bodies. They're, again, using their nose and all of that enrichment. People ask all the time, how do I stop the digging? You don't really stop the digging. They actually now make, I don't know if you've seen these, Crystals, digging pads. I have not seen one actually in use, but they're like a giant circle. My guess is they're used for, like, if I lived in an apartment, I would probably have one of these. And it's like a thick kind of material. I think you can hide stuff under it and somehow it encourages them to dig. I think there's some electronic component to it. I don't know if something moves under there to encourage them to dig. But yeah, you have to find an outlet for that digging. Just like a retriever needs something to put in their mouth that is not your arm, your terriers need somewhere to dig that is safe and appropriate.
And if you think about your terrier, so let's widen that lens out a little bit and talk about, your Jack Russell Terriers, your Rat Terriers, your Norwich Terriers, your Cairn Terriers, your Pit Bull Terriers. We put a lot of the sort of Bulldog breeds into this category also. These are tenacious little dogs. And they are, I'm going to get the thing and I'm going to get the thing. And, your littler terriers were bred to keep barns safe from rodents and stuff. So they're going to get the critter. And to do that, a lot of them have to dig, a lot of critters go to ground. So then the terriers are then bred to go to ground after the critter. And these critters are just as tenacious as the dogs are. So, you've got a little dog that is super brave and super fearless, and it's going to get the thing. Like, that's the goal, is to get the thing. So you have to kind of keep that in mind if you are looking for more of a dog who would rather be with you or would rather listen to every word that you say, then a terrier is probably not the breed for you. Probably would refer you back to a retriever or to a herding breed, because living with a terrier is interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
They keep you on your toes.
Oh yeah. We moved to a house. Nellie is a Staffordshire Terrier. Mostly she's a mix, but mostly Staffordshire Terrier. And she is absolutely the critter hunter. She will hunt bugs, not if they're in the house for some terrible reason I don't understand. That's the worst. But she does. I mean, I just found a dead skeleton of something on our back step the other day. We don't use that door, so I had not seen it before. She will catch birds. She will go catching things above the ground, below the ground. Moles are a common thing we find her catching. Little field mice, which stinks because they're adorable. Nellie does not care. She will get them.
She's real cute when she chases the frogs too.
Oh yeah, she kind of hops around. Anything that moves, anything. Yeah. And luckily somehow the squirrels have decided that they're smarter than the average squirrel. They don't come in our yard, but if Nellie sees them 3 yards down, she will be barking at them at 5 o'clock in the morning. She does not care who hears. And she will, and she will bring her inside, because obviously we don't want her waking up the whole neighborhood. We'll bring her inside, but she'll be sitting next to the door whining for 2 hours until you let her out. She's determined to go get that thing. I think we talked another time about, we take her to the brewery regularly. She saw a lizard one time in the front garden there. And every time we go to the brewery, she has to check that spot to see if that lizard is still there. She is determined that one day, it doesn't matter if it's 5 years later, one day she will catch that lizard. It does not leave her brain. If you ever think your dog is stubborn, I mean, we say stubborn is a bad word in dog training, but terriers come pretty close. They're very tenacious. I like the word that Crystal uses, tenacious. They're determined.
Yeah, their motivations are a little different than other dogs. Like, yeah, I see your food and I see your toys, but let me think about that.
Yeah, thank God Nellie has a little bit of mix in her, because the food is still primary. But it's tough. She has her moments where even the food won't do it. I mean, if she hops herself into a pond with frogs, you just have to wait for her to decide to get out, because I'm not going into a pond to go get her. And I just need to wait it out.
Yeah. And that's where you manage your expectations. Like,
absolutely.
let her into the pond with the frogs unless you have a few hours to stand there and wait for her.
And again, for her birthday, that's what I let her do. Was we went to the swamp and I let her go be a swamp dog, chasing all the swamp things for an hour, and then promptly took her to get her a bath. But that was her gift. I obviously don't let her into the swamp regularly, but that was, okay, today is your day. Be the swamp dog.
Yeah, they do. They like living with a terrier. You definitely have to weigh out your options. Whereas, my herding dogs, if they got out, I mean, like, yeah, they'll come back. They really don't want to leave my side. But a terrier would reconsider everything they've ever learned.
We used to joke when we first moved here, Nellie was just escaping the backyard. It was like we had checked the fence out of time. There weren't gaps in the fence. We had propped up anything. We put down, all kinds of deterrents, not like chemical deterrents or electronic deterrents or anything, but all kinds of things, cinder blocks, whatever. And Nellie just finds a way because she's that determined. And we would joke, like, who do you think is going to feed you better than we do? Like, you have an ideal house. We give you enrichment stuff all day long. I cook you pork like once a month. Where do you think you're going to go that's better? But still, she, it's freedom. And she's like, woohoo. She does that little happy, like, yeah. She's a terrier.
Yeah. Terriers. Super fun.
Yeah.
Super fun. We love them. We do. We love all of our.
I love them. Yeah.
So Crystal and I had a lot of things to talk about with this episode. We actually ended up breaking it into 2 episodes. So part 2 will be back here in a couple weeks. Can't wait to see it.